I give my all to be.
Good afternoon, everybody, even, and hope you're all doing well, and welcome to the end of day 3 of the Fair Education Impact Festival, and this final session of day 3. And we're so excited to have you all at the festival, which, as you know, is taking place until the 29th of April. My name is Sam, and I'm the co-CEO at the FEA, and I'll be supporting this session this evening alongside Ellie. You can give us a wave, who's our office manager. So this session is called Climate and Nature Education is for Everyone, and we're delighted that it's going to be hosted today by Matthew Shribman from AimHi, who will be handing over to him in a few minutes' time. So please do get involved on social media as well as at the different sessions. So you can see on the slide there our hashtag Impact Festival handle and tagging @_the FEA. And Ellie's just put that in the chat for you as well to get involved on social and share with everyone who's not able to make the session this evening. So before we kick off, I'll just do a quick introduction to the Fair Education Alliance for those of you who are a bit less familiar. So as you all know, we exist with a shared vision of, oh gosh, getting a bit keen there, that we want an education system that is fair, where no child's educational success is limited by their socio-economic background. And that vision is shared by our over 200 member organisations from business, education and charity, who are all collectively and individually working to make education fair in England. In addition to work on collective action and policy and influencing, we run 3 award programmes which help nurture and scale impactful solutions to end educational inequality in England. 2 of those awards programmes are currently open for applications until the 18th of May, and we really encourage you to consider applying. Both awards receive a £15,000 salary contribution for the entrepreneur and 1 year of support to anyone who has a great idea to make education fair and wants to reach more young people. FEA members can apply for the Entrepreneurship Award to support an innovation within your organisations. And then with the Innovation Award, all members of the public can apply for that. And it's for any early stage innovators who have a great idea that they want to turn into a thriving initiative. So we have a number of sessions throughout the festival that you'll be able to hear more about these awards, which you can see at the bottom of the slide there. And you'll also hear from the current portfolio of 10 award winners for 2021, and they'll share their experiences. So I'll stop sharing my slides now, and we want to kick off the sessions, as we do with all our sessions, with a chance for you to all chat between you and do some speed networking. So Ellie's about to break you out into small groups of 2 to 3, and we would love for you to answer the question, which is related to the theme of today's session on climate and nature education for everyone. And the question is, how can we give young people a sense of purpose, and why is it important to do so? So Ellie will put that in the chat. How can we give young people a sense of purpose, and why is it important to do so? So we'll break you out now for about 4 minutes, and then we'll hand over to the session lead, Matthew, to take us from there. So over into breakouts. Welcome back, everybody. I think we've got most faces back in the room now. I hope you all had a fruitful breakout session and met someone that you either are reconnecting with, that you've spoken with before, or you've made a new connection. That's one of the key aims of this Impact Festival, so I hope you enjoyed that part. And now, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Matthew, who's going to be leading us through the session this evening.
Sorry, all couldn't find the unmute button. Hi all, thanks for coming and thanks for talking through that. I hope that was a good initial question to get you thinking about this. And maybe you were thinking, what's this got kind of directly to do with climate and nature? And I think that purpose is everything. We are suffering a pandemic scale loss of purpose as community is eroded, globalization and consumerism dominate our patterns of behavior, and social media distorts our reality. And the mental health crisis is happening because of the planetary crisis. The way we coexist with the rest of nature is broken, and it is breaking us. And burnout is so widespread now that it is almost a part of our common life experience. Who here has experienced burnout recently? Probably a lot of us. Do throw your answers into the chat, by the way. I'm watching it in case you'd like to say. But yes. But yeah, you what was I saying? Oh, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, but you know what researchers find partially or sometimes entirely inoculates us all from burnout, perhaps to the demise of all of our free time if we have this, but the answer is purpose. Purpose inoculates us from burnout. Purpose does so much more than this though as well. Purpose gives us energy, it gives us strength, and it gives us belief in ourselves. And it's our belief at AimHi that one of the most important things that we can do to help combat inequality is by giving people a sense of purpose. And I'm going to come back to that more towards the end. But first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about AimHi. So AimHi, we've set up a live interactive online school, and it exists to make world-class live learning accessible to everyone. And there are two main reasons that we've done this. Firstly, people are disengaged with learning all around the world. People are uninspired, demotivated, struggling, and bored. And of all the times in history, we need people to be learning and wanting to learn. Our education system is seriously antiquated, and Victorian style schools are still training up factory workers to do repetitive tasks as if the Industrial Revolution is still happening. And meanwhile, AI and tech are changing the world and obsoleting all of these skills. And according to the UN, 65% of current primary school students will go into jobs that don't exist yet. And of course, a lot of people are worrying about AI and how we'll compete with the machines, but it's the wrong kind of thinking. In the future, what will allow us to thrive isn't our ability to iterate repetitive tasks or memorize and regurgitate Googleable facts. Instead, at this inflection point in history, we need to be doubling down on what makes us human, embracing what makes us different rather than all the same. What we need now are innovators, critical thinkers, problem solvers, whole systems thinkers, able to bridge silos, and empathic relationship builders, and composites of all of the above, basically. And so we as a planet have been training people to be machines for a very long time now, and it's no wonder that we are in the situation that we are in. It also perpetuates inequality in the worst kind of way, to be equipping people with skills and knowledge that are obsolete as soon as they leave school, making it even more about who you know instead of what you know. I'm wondering who here felt that when they left school, they were completely equipped for the world ahead. I did not. And the other main reason for us setting up AimHi, and the reason why we're doing what we're doing, is the shifting landscape of global role models. So have any of you seen this study that shows that maps out famous people over the last few thousands of years? So it uses cultural mentions to work out who was famous and what they were famous for and how famous they were and so on. So you can use it to take a slice of time and see who the famous people were or who were the role models. So a couple of 100 years ago, I'll just show you this slice of time. Oh, is that working? That was strange. Oh, I know what's happened. Sorry about this, guys. There we go. Yeah, so a couple of 100 years ago, it was like this. You had a lot of politicians. I guess you had quite a bit of Napoleon going on in there. And then it was about a third scientists and about a quarter writers and philosophers and architects and musicians and things like that. So it was basically dominated by thinkers. Now, fast forward to the last, well, what do you guys think, actually? What do you think will happen to the scientists if we step forward 100 years?
I'm thinking we get a lot more.
Somebody's saying, I just heard someone say more. A lot of people saying decrease. So it looks like this. Scientists shrink quite significantly in terms of their cultural influence. Writers and philosophers are also down a similar amount. Cut to the most recent 50 years, and we're looking at almost entirely football players, sports people, and celebrities. And to be honest, scientists are barely even worth labeling. Now, we obsess over the micro trends of our era, but it's slow-moving mega trends like this one that are shaping reality. Celebrities are now shaping the world's aspirations and dreams. And meanwhile, social media algorithms optimizing for holding our attention, building celebrity followings, foregoing veracity, intelligence, and quality are making this skew even more extreme every day. And we think at AimHi that this is permeating everything. From a young age, we're being taught distorted values like a love of consumerism, and through to notions like we should compete for the best grades instead of collaborate for them. We learn crazy things like the idea that to win is to dominate, when really it's clear from observing the rest of nature that the only way to really win is to become a valued part of a community. So AimHi exists to turn this around. You've probably heard the Ed Wilson quote that the big problem with humanity is that we have prehistoric emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. And if we can't close those gaps, then we are screwed. In the words of H.G. Wells, civilization is in a constant race between education and catastrophe. So we're doing the education bit rather than the catastrophe bit. Yeah, what is AimHi doing to address all of this? Well, I guess the best question to start with here is like, what's the most important thing to all of us in our lifetimes in general, like all living things? What's the most important thing? Like
staying alive.
Staying alive, good answer. That's kind of important. But what about our children, our descendants, right? In the long term, that's the most important thing. Almost nothing is more important than our descendants. And who do we entrust our children to? What's the one group we'll trust to guide, inspire, and shape them? The answer is teachers. Teachers are the most important people in the world, but are they seen that way? No. 1 in 3 teachers in the UK plans to quit within the next 5 years. There's almost no profession more undervalued, and this is the big problem that we are trying to solve. We really think that teachers should be superstars. It's already happening in places like South Korea, where individual teachers fill stadiums, and we are at AimHi trying to do this on a global scale. We think that the role of teachers is changing. The teachers of the future will be charismatic storytellers, thinkers, questioners, doers, and exceptional role models. I kind of want to ask, do you guys remember, I'm sure you all do, a teacher who really inspired you? And are you potentially who you are because of them? What if everyone had a teacher like them? Like being a great teacher is a gift, and some people have this kind of almost magical ability to transfer understanding and electrify people. Many people with PhDs don't have it. A lot of people with no qualifications do, and it's what we're constantly hunting for at AimHi. So yes, we are building a school where learners everywhere can experience the best teacher they've ever had in the palm of their hand, and crucially for very little or no money at all, at any time of day. We think this is how hundreds of millions of people are going to be learning in the future, online in large sessions, and it's really just a matter of when. So at AimHi, we're creating a movement to try to reshape this, and we need to convince everyone around us, I think, to act in a common purpose, and we hope that you guys will come on this journey with us. We've been quite exceptionally lucky on this journey so far with some really great partners from Cambridge University, the Eden Project, Purpose, and others supporting us from early on, and without them we would definitely not be where we are. Anyway, right, now let's talk about climate and nature education. Now I say nature because language is important, and we need to start saying "and nature" after climate always, I think. Now, at this juncture, I can either tell you a little bit more about the climate course that we're doing, or I could show you a little bit of it. Which would you like to do first? See a little bit of climate course, or do you want me to talk about it a little bit more? Waiting to see what people have decided. See it, right? Great. The results are unanimous. Okay, what time are we on? 5:23. Okay, I'll start here. This isn't necessarily my favorite bit of the course, but I'm going to do this bit just because it leads into a bit which talks about good communication about climate and nature. So that seemed apt. Okay, so to start, actually, it doesn't start on an image. It just starts with this, with a face of a teacher again. So to start with, I want you to imagine that you are holding the most delicious sandwich in the world. Now, unfortunately, you're not quite hungry yet. And so instead of eating it, you decide to go for a walk. Now, naturally, you put it down on the floor with a sign clearly labeling that it's not to be stolen, because that would be illegal. Now, don't write the answer immediately if you've already heard this, but you then walk 1 kilometer south, and then 1 kilometer east, and then 1 kilometer north. So 1 kilometer south, 1 kilometer east, and then 1 kilometer north. You then pick up the sandwich and you eat it, and it is really delicious. Now, how did this happen? How is this possible? Have a think. Okay, do put your answers in now, even if you knew this from the beginning. Someone moved the sandwich. No, because the sign was there. You're forgetting about the legalities of the process. Not on an iceberg. Nope, the sandwich did not move. It is your sandwich. It's the very same one. Okay, so normally we think of these directions. Oh, that's moved. I'll have to pop that back over there. Normally we think of these directions, so south, east, and north, as being like three sides of a square, right? But when we look at the world like this, we can see that actually all of the north-south lines converge at the north and south pole. So if we start at the north pole and we go this far to the south, then it doesn't actually matter how far east we go. As soon as we go the same distance to the north again, we get back to the North Pole. Now, in fact, there's another different place on Earth where you could be too, which isn't the South Pole, but that's just for if you'd like to try level 2 of the delicious sandwich problem. Anyway, why did we do this? It's because it's important to keep in mind how natural it is for all of us to think of things from a local rather than a global perspective. And it's nothing to be embarrassed about if we didn't get the sandwich problem. Thinking locally is how we're all evolved to think. And appreciating this is helpful for understanding and improving ourselves, yes, but most of all, it's important for helping us to shape the way we talk to others about the climate and nature crisis, whether we're helping people to find a more global point of view or finding a story that's of local relevance to those who we're communicating to give it more meaning for them. Either way, the key takeaway is this: we can't ever expect others to think globally. We have to help one another to do so. So at the moment, some of the AimHi team are running a kind of side project. Oh, no, don't do that. Struggling with a new Zoom here. So at the moment, some of the AimHi team are running a side project supported by Cambridge Zero and the Grantham Institute and others to convince the BBC, Sky, and other broadcasters to show the daily level of CO2 in the news and weather forecasts. And Sky is kind of starting this now. So the idea is to show the historic rise of CO2, as you can see here, and the level today, and also to show how much it's changed in the last couple of years. Anyway, one of the suggestions that came back first from the BBC weather team was asking us if we could supply them with the data to make a map of local CO2 levels so that everyone can check their local level. Now, we appreciate that local stories are often more compelling to people, but what do you think might be problematic about this idea of a map with local CO2 levels? Any ideas? No worries if not. So this is very, people won't think there's a problem if it's low in that area. Great point, Ellie. Yes, exactly. So this is very local thinking when it's the global perspective that actually matters. CO2 sees no borders, right? We all breathe the same air and it's mixing all the time. The local level of CO2 has little to no effect on any of us, provided we're not literally in a fire. In contrast, the global level has a consequence for all of us. Where the local story is exciting is not what the level of CO2 happens to be, it's that anything we do locally to reduce emissions or store carbon has a positive global effect. Even small local actions like cycling, choosing less meat, or helping a little portion of space to be a bit wilder helps to combat droughts in Asia, sea level rise in Oceania, crop failure in the Americas, and much more. Now, you might have heard people saying, think globally, act locally, and this is what they mean. If we can help others to see how powerful our seemingly small contributions can be in solving problems all across the planet, then that is very, very valuable. I, in particular, love the people of Bhutan. They are running an entirely carbon negative country, absorbing more carbon than they emit, benefiting everyone in the world thanks to their local commitment to keep 72% of Bhutan covered in forests, which is pretty cool. Okay, I now want to talk to you about air pollution, but before I do, can everyone please hold their hand under their nose like this, and now breathe out through your nose. Now, at any given time, we all have a dominant nostril. Please type into the chat which one of yours is dominant now. Left, right, Jessica's saying right, James is saying right, left from, is that a left from Joe? Yeah. I've got a dominant left, actually. So it's normal for one of us to, it's normal for us to have one dominant nostril at a time. And every now and then it switches over. Anyway, that isn't necessarily related to climate or nature, but it was quite fun, right? Now, some of you might already feel this instinctively, but if not, remember that when talking to people about the climate and nature crisis, if we're to supercharge our ability to make a difference, it's very important for us to be relatable and approachable. It's also very important for us to be real and honest, because on the most part, humans cope a lot better when they know the full truth of things rather than worrying about unknowns. Throughout our history, we humans have attempted to replace unknowns wherever we could, through everything from science to oracles. Also because the terrifying reality and scale of the crisis is generally extremely motivating for people. I say generally because it's also very reasonable to worry about causing paralyzing anxiety when talking about the climate crisis. However, the answer is not to withhold information. The answer is to communicate with solutions that are manageable for the people we're talking to, and to show everyone how powerful and valued they can and will be as members of the growing global community pushing for a livable future. I also think that climate anxiety is the wrong name. It's very inward and suppressive and negative as a concept. In the words of Caroline Hickman of the Climate Psychology Alliance, this feeling shows that people actually care. We should work to reframe it as climate empathy, feeling the reality and the truth and channeling that into strength. Empathy is the beginning of action. Now, it's very important to talk about big systemic solutions, and of course they're essential, but without being coupled with achievable individual ones. They can also make us feel very demotivated. If we feel that the world is moving in the wrong direction, we don't have a way to slow it down. Also, the many decades-old psychology tells us that the most powerful way to get people invested in things is to give them one small, easy, positive, tangible thing to do, like giving up beef, for example. Before you know it, they'll be learning more, checking the sustainability of their food, and joining climate movements. And lastly, when people communicate, when we communicate with too much negative energy, it can turn people away and make people feel hopeless, disempowered, and guilty for things that are outside of their control, resulting in despondency and indifference. It's easy to communicate with negative energy because it's a crisis, it's an emergency, and it's frightening. But it's well understood that people need to feel hope to make a difference. Hope does not mean downplaying the problem or being overly optimistic. Hope comes from positive actions, and positive actions breed more hope. In the words of Greta Thunberg, once we start to act, hope is everywhere. Now, what time are we on? 34. I'm going to just show you this other bit because I think this bit's really cool. But this is I wasn't going to do this, but I'll just quickly do it anyway. So this is just skipping a little bit further into the climate course, just because I love this bit. So here's a beautiful dragonfly going about its business. Now, we recently figured out that the design of dragonfly wings is far more efficient and faster at maneuvering than our current drone technology. So we're now developing even better drones inspired by dragonflies. And we also just discovered that their wings are covered in these tiny little spikes that are so tiny and so sharp that they can burst bacteria as they land, which could inspire a whole new generation of antibacterial surfaces. Now, what percentage of the species of insects that exist do you guys reckon we've discovered so far? What percentage of all the species that exist do you reckon we have discovered so far? Ooh, we're seeing a couple of 30s from Joe and Catherine, surprisingly similar. You guys are comparing notes. So no, we think it's about 10%. Basically, we barely know any of them. Now, think about how much we've only just learned from one body part of one insect in only the last few years. As we talk about in another lesson, we are totally dependent on pollinating insects for about 90% of our food supply and for holding much of life on Earth together, yet levels of global insects are plummeting. Scientists are calling it the insect apocalypse. The main reasons why this is happening are very simple and also simple to turn around. One of them is the loss of wild places that we talk about in another lesson. Ironically, the chocolate midge, you know, the small mosquito that pollinates chocolate plants, is disappearing even as chocolate plantations grow, because it doesn't live in the chocolate plants. It lives in the wild places that are removed to make way for the monoculture of chocolate plants. And the other one is insecticides. Now, I would then go on to talk more about insecticides, but instead what I'm going to do is kind of come back out of here and talk to you a little more about what's been going on with the climate course and why we structured it in this way and how it's been going. So first of all, facts don't change behavior in a lot of people. As David Attenborough says, this is a communication problem. People make their decisions based on emotions and the stories that we tell ourselves. And so it's absolutely essential that when we communicate these things, we do it through stories. And we make sure that we tell a narrative that triggers emotions. So we've created this live online course that provides a complete solution for upskilling and empowering people ages 10 to 100. And we have had that age range on it. We've had teachers through to farmers. We've had climate activists through to skeptics, and all of whom we've managed to get very positive responses from. And this is important for many reasons, and I'm going to talk more about the inequality aspects later. But Project Drawdown ranks education and health in its top 5 of over 80 solutions to the climate crisis, with a potential sequestration of over 80 gigatons of CO2 over the next 30 years. Delivering effective, relatable climate education to hundreds of millions of people would change the course of history. So this is what we're intending to do with this project. to do so, we've created this very scalable one-to-many model. So one teacher, and then supported by tech to enable meaningful interactions with huge numbers of people at a time. Now, obviously, we've just done this on Zoom, but we use other platforms to have different levels of interaction. We've had about 17,000 on one lesson at a time so far, but we also do the kind of smaller ones as well, depending on the situation, and we're developing the course that's specifically for teachers. But the key thing about this course is that it's very impactful. 92% of non-vegan attendees reduce their intake of animal products after going through it. 100% reduce their plastic purchasing. 90% use what they learn to elicit positive changes in others. These stats are very high, and although we're still starting out, so these are still relatively small sample numbers, this is the kind of thing that feels like it could change the world if we can scale it up and find the right people to work with on it. But yes, it's compact. It's 4 modular parts. It only takes up to 4 hours, and it provides a full grounding in all the ideas, and it cuts through the misinformation. The idea is not to kind of tell everyone everything like a lot of the equivalent things in the space do. The idea is to shift the paradigms, pick up on the misconceptions, and allow people to make informed choices for themselves at a local and international level, because we really believe that change happens through empowering individuals rather than just a top-down telling people what to do. So yes, we've created this and tried to make it informed by the best science. We've got Cambridge backing it, and as I said, it's very informed by behavioral psychology and storytellers, because we know that this is how people change their minds. It's highly distinct from most MOOCs in that it's constantly engaging. We're constantly asking people questions as we go through, and I hope that you got a little bit of a flavor with that. I actually did a less interactive bit than normal, but yes, AimHi now, the course is now being promoted by the UN Environment Programme, and Chris Packham and WWF are starting to bring it into a coalition, and so we're starting to scale it up. But the view with it isn't just the UK, nor even the English language. We're translating it culturally and linguistically around the world so that we can create this free climate education in as many places as possible. And so we're building partnerships in China and Indonesia and Kenya and Poland, and the list is going on. But myself as a scientist, like for a long time, I knew about the crisis and I didn't act very much, and nor did I feel the urgency. And I think that's something that possibly we're all quite familiar with, that sense of understanding it, but not making changes. And it's difficult to cross that divide, and it's difficult to help other people to do that. And I think that's the challenge that we all face as teachers, to try and help people to cross that divide. We don't think of AimHi as like being able to do everything. We want to be seen as the activators. And in this very short course, we get people wanting to learn more and wanting to be active change makers. We then try to bring people to what others already have. And so if you're working with organizations that are already doing great work in this space, please tell us, because we want to link people to it afterwards. We're not reinventing the wheel. We're trying to be the catalyst that reaches outside the echo chamber and gets people aboard this global movement, feeling empowered and inspired and able to drive positive change. And where does this fit into combating inequality? Well, everywhere. Like, where else is the education system failing us more as a planet than on climate and nature? Where better place to begin the polite rebellion that we need against the failing system than climate and nature? If we can create something that is accessible to everyone, that can give the right knowledge, ideas, and empowerment to everyone, then that is an enormous shift of power into the hands of individuals, local communities, and most of all, those who will otherwise be neglected when the ship really hits the fan, which it will do. So we are currently focusing most of our work on teachers, because we know that it's through teachers that the greatest impact can be had, and that's how we can multiply what we can do. And we know that teachers have the power to reach what many think to be the most influential part of society, which is the teenagers. Because I don't know if you guys have heard of the Great Schlep. It's a political campaign that happened in California, I think, where they were encouraging teenagers in the Jewish community to convince their parents and their grandparents to vote for the Democrats. And it was one of the most effective political campaigns ever, because it's an incredible age at which you have the capacity to learn very complicated things and then explain them to other people as well. And so you have the capacity to explain them to your parents, your grandparents, and so on. And so I really genuinely believe that as a group of teachers, all of us can completely change the world by spreading knowledge to the right kinds of people. The right kinds of people being teenagers. So I've got a few links that I was going to share. I was just going to share, we're running a crowdfunder for our international work, which I'll share the link to. And then our climate course in general is happening in May, but there's also a climate course for teachers. And we're also running it for companies to raise money so that we can then run it for inexpensively as possible to teachers and the public. So the one, here are the links. The one in May is free on social media, but you can pay £3 and that will get you kind of like reminders and the packs automatically sent to you and all those kinds of things. So do check out those. Oh, I've just realized that AimHi doesn't have a, but anyway, copy and paste those if you'd like to, but do send AimHi as well to anyone in companies. That would be great. I'll just make a proper link. And am I connected with 100? Yes, yeah, we're part of the 100 community. It's a really nice group. But I think at that stage I'll actually finish it. I finished quite a bit earlier than I expected to, but if anyone has any questions, I would more than happily take them. But if not, what happens? Do we just stop? And have I failed to meet the full requirements of sub? Sorry. Interested to know how we work with schools. Okay, good question, Sarah. So this has been quite a difficult one for us because we're really keen to work with schools in general, but at the same time, schools all work in so many different ways. And so in terms of one of the things that we were hoping to be able to, that we hope to do with our work with the Fair Education Alliance and the community here is that we know that we have something that can be delivered to large numbers of schools for extremely inexpensively, because it can be done in a way that really scales. And what we're hoping for is more links to help to get into those kinds of communities, because as I'm sure all of you know, it's such hard work to get integrated into these communities. And we have a lot of talks going on with organizations like the Prince's Trust and the Eden Project, who are obviously doing the Morecambe Bay curriculum, and they're doing great work around there. And so we're hoping to be able to get into it, especially a lot of these disadvantaged schools in those regions. But ultimately, it's really hard work getting into schools because a lot of the time you're doing it on quite an individual basis. And so if anyone has any advice or tips on how we can get into more schools, we would love that. Oh, another thing is we're working with Whole Education, who I know are linked to a lot of schools, in order to get out more broadly. But yeah, that's one of our ongoing questions.
I have a quick, I don't know if it's a question, just a thought. I think there's something around that connection with educational inequality that I think is absolutely there, but I wonder if it just needs a bit more articulation, like, because I'm kind of with you, Matthew, that there is the connection, but I think we could work together to tell that story better of why it relates to our mission to make education fairer and transform outcomes for young people from all backgrounds, and why this matters. And I think there's something around connecting it with, so the FEA has the education system that develops the whole child, and about education being about more than just academic attainment, but also skills and well-being. And I think it probably fits into that somewhere, and that kind of connection with purpose, etc. But I'd love to have a think about how we could tell that story and articulate it even better.
Gina, you were going to say, I have a response to that, but Gina, you put your hand up.
No, you go first.
Okay, I was just going to say, like, I really think that we are on the brink of a huge revolution in terms of learning. I think that so much of the way that the syllabus is set out for people is just really not fit for purpose. As I was saying before, I think that we're learning so many obsolete skills and things that are not leaving people feeling empowered and able to engage with their reality, and people leave school really under-equipped. And I think that there is I really think there's no better place than climate and nature to give people ownership of the future, because there's no, you can talk to some of the CEOs of some of the biggest companies and they don't know basic things about this. And then you put that knowledge and those skills into the hands and the heads of people who are from quite disadvantaged backgrounds, and suddenly they're the people who can be the leaders of tomorrow, because that's what the future is going to be. It's going to completely dominate everything. So, sorry, yeah, you're absolutely right though. I didn't articulate that well enough, but that's completely agreed. Gina, sorry, you were gonna.
Shall I jump in? I have a few questions and one comment. The comment first, as a Jew from California, apparently the Great Schlep was in Florida. So there we go.
Oh, was it? Oh, thank you so much.
Yes, it was
That's
Jews from New York, young Jews from New York, going down to convince their grandparents or other elderly Jews in Florida to vote in the 2008 election. So there we go. I was like, I feel like I would have known about it. But there we are. So that's one fact. Then the second one is around, so I chair the OVO Foundation, and it's OVO Energy, so a green energy organization. And actually the two pillars that we have are climate and nature, and then young people and educational disadvantage. But one of the biggest tensions we face, and I'd love your take on this, is around educational disadvantage with climate and nature, and the need for this to be everybody's issue, with saying, actually, it's a thing that disadvantaged young people need to be particularly concerned with. And I think that's definitely something we've been looking at in terms of the framing. And so if you had any thoughts on that, would really welcome those right now. And then my final question is also around Michael Norton. We've had the great pleasure of collaborating with him. Is what you're talking about the project that you're doing in collaboration with Michael, or is this also like a separate strand? Would love if you could share a bit more.
We do a lot of things with Michael Norton. So I guess that in that sense, this philosophy permeates pretty much everything we do with him, probably everything actually. Yes. Yeah. So I think the answer to that is just a good old yes. In terms of, I hope that I understood your question correctly. But one of the things that's in the course is talking about how, and I know this isn't exactly answering your question, but it's talking about how there's often this narrative that goes on of certain places will be affected by the climate crisis more than others, certain regions of the world. And it gives this false sense of security in places like Northern Europe, where you're like, oh, it'll be fine for me. And this narrative is obviously completely ridiculous, because the climate crisis will affect all of us on a huge scale. In the longer term, there may be some people who will affect more than others in the short term. But in that sense, I agree there's a very dangerous narrative to have this sense of like less well-advantaged people need to be worrying about this more, because they're the ones who will suffer more, because ultimately I think everyone is going to suffer in this. But in terms of, again, I don't know if this is quite the answer to your question, but it was what I was thinking about as you were asking it, about disadvantaged people and the way to connect them with these things. I think one of the most important things is to help to give them experiences with nature. All the research shows that the more time and the more connectedness we have with nature, the more likely we are to have views that are aligned with basically the scientific reality later in life. And so for us, that's one of the big challenges, because I know that what we do is we're an online school. And in that sense, we don't have that ability to tangibly connect people with nature. What we do is we can activate people and inspire people and get people raring to go. And we know that we can do that with students, and we know that we can do that with teachers. But what we really need is to be able to work with organizations who can then do the next bit and be like, right, we're going to this forest outside the town for this lesson, because that's the thing that's going to help to shape these kids for the better in the long term. Did I fully answer your question? No, I don't know if I did. Okay, good. Sorry, I keep asking you questions while you're in the middle of a mouthful. Yeah. Okay, I see there's a question here from Emma, who says, is the main aim to get individuals to change their lifestyles and reduce personal carbon footprints, or about how to challenge governments on their climate action on a macro level, i.e. activism? So one of the things that I always think about here is that politics is of the people. And whilst we need the whole system to change, and therefore we need politics to change, politics is changed by the actions of people. And so whilst it's very important to build into the narrative of individual change, we have to be honest and say, you know, individual change isn't enough. But at the same time, doing it and living the reality that we think should exist summates to the actual like overall change that we need. So we need people to be making these individual changes because it shifts politics. So in that sense, I really think we have to do both. But at the same time, it's patently ridiculous that it's fine to just look at individual actions and for that to be the basis on which we try and solve things. It's kind of like the equivalent of the government saying, hey, we're going to get rid of all the laws related to stealing things, and we're going to get rid of all the police, but don't steal things, guys, because it's bad. And then everyone just having to decide for themselves. Now, most people perhaps wouldn't steal things, but some people would. We know that system doesn't work, and ultimately that's what we're living. That's the reality that we're living in now. We're living in this reality where the government's like, yeah, you should all do these individual actions, but there's no structure to make these things happen, and the problems will continue for as long as we don't have those structures in place. So, so yes, I am highly supportive of both individual changes and the need for activism in order to create the larger scale of action. And that is the last question I could find.
Fantastic. We've probably got one chance for one more question if anybody wants to jump in and ask anything. If not, we can wrap up. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
I'm sorry that this was a bit short, actually. I normally do these way too long. So I was like, purposefully like cutting this out because I'm normally just massively overrun on these things.
No, so definitely no need to apologise, Matthew. That's been an absolutely fascinating session. You'll be delighted to know that the FEA group chat was on fire. And so C1 actually joined because she had FOMO. So we were saying it was a fantastic session. And I'm sure all of our FEA members and innovators who joined as well will agree. Really, really big thank you. You've got such a great energy. I can see if I was a kid learning about this, I'd be like, sign me up. What do you want me to do? So thank you so much, Matthew, for your energy and time. And I think there's so many takeaways for us and all of our organizations across the membership for how we can not only take things away to our work, but also connect up with what AimHi are doing as well. So hopefully you've all made connections in that way. And one thing I'm going to take away is definitely how to articulate that definite connection between inequality in education and making it fairer and this connection with climate and nature. I think there's definitely something there which we can articulate really, really cleverly and really powerfully. So thank you so much, everybody, and thank you, Matthew. So we'll just wrap up with a quick poll and some feedback, which is really important to us. So we can iterate as we go through the festival and make sure it's working for you all as our attendees. We'll do a quick poll now, which Ellie will pull up on your screen. And Ellie will also put our email address in the chat for any qualitative feedback that you want to send us immediately, so we can iterate as we go over the next few days. So if we can pull the poll up. And I can see also Matthew's kindly put his resources in the chat as well. So feel free to copy and paste those and get those out. So have we got the poll? It's not come up for me yet. I don't know. Has it come up for others? Oh, okay.
Yeah, we've got about 6.5 people that have filled it in so far.
Great. Great. And then if Ellie, you can give me a nod when we've got that filled in. And then if we can just come off mute and give Matthew a round of applause, and then we will leave you to your sunshine evenings. Thank you, Matthew.
Thanks all. Enjoy the sun. Farewell.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.